Hello, my name is Eric DiPietro. Welcome to my presentation today. Get out of here. Actually, I'm Eric DiPietro, and this is my presentation. Catch a person a fish, you feed them for a day. Teach a person to fish, they can bill lots of days. So, who am I? So that's the cool thing about social engineering. You can be anybody you want, or sometimes you can even be nobody. So let's try that again. That's a little bit better. And we'll just try to be non-OS specific so that everybody, all the bases are covered. So who am I really? My name is Eric DiPietro, and I began in the security industry before there was even a Google, seriously. And I worked on a number of different development tools, assessment tools, and I say a number because I would have to count them all. It's taken me a while to figure it out how many, just a bunch of them. I've done security assessments, web app security assessments for practically every industry that you could think of. Big oil, electrical companies, universities, hospitals, pharmacies, lots of banks and financial institutions, retirement firms, and just all kinds of assessments all over the world. And today I'm going to talk about something that I have only been doing for about 9 months, which is something relatively new for me. And, why am I going to talk about something that I don't have as much experience with? So why we're going to have this talk? Well, from a web app security background, I learned a lot of stuff that actually was applicable to social engineering. And those are the type of things I want to share. So this talk is not necessarily for those who have a lot of experience with social engineering, even though I hope that they would find this talk useful as well. But it's more geared towards those who maybe have never done it and are interested in even trying it out or seeing if it's something that they would be interested in trying, just to expand their skill sets. So we'll just kind of go through some terminology real quick, because I know sometimes you get on a call with a client, like at a bank, and they talk about a lot of things that, they have a alphabet soup of acronyms and stuff, and I don't even know all the things that they have. So I just want to make sure that, these are some simple terms. Most of you probably already know these, but just kind of go through just so everybody knows what we're talking about here. SE, social engineering, just is, using deception to manipulate somebody and get something out of them, information or some personal information or some proprietary information. Vishing is the short for voice phishing, and that's when you're using the phone to defraud somebody and just using the phone rather than email or doing it in person. OSINT is our open source intelligence gathering, just being able to find out any information about the people that we're going to try to target, and just anything that you can find, legally on a number of different websites or ways of finding things out about people. Our target is the person that is going to be the victim of our social engineering discussion. The pretext is the situation or scenario that we create, how we're going to try to, what we're going to present to the target in order to get what we want. And a portal in this, and the purpose of this discussion is just the fake website we create that we're going to use to obtain a target's individuals, and just during this discussion. And for the sake of this discussion, our pretext is that we are supposedly going to be, an IT part of the help desk, IT staff, and we have a software upgrade that we need to get the user to apply so that they can, log into the web portal that we created and get that software update. So that's kind of the pretext that we'll use for this purpose of this discussion. So a lot of big differences between web app security assessments and phishing. And so, for one, you have analytics and you're thinking a lot on web app stuff, and phishing, there's a lot of adrenaline. With web apps, you can get adrenaline when you discover a vulnerability, particularly a high severity one. But with phishing, it's basically just as soon as they answer the phone, you kind of get that adrenaline rush. And web app is based more on your thought and understanding and being smart about the application, whereas phishing is based on deception, your ability to deceive somebody. And with web apps assessments, you can use something like Burp Repeater and send the same request hundreds of times, and you have a lot a lot of chances. There's no consequences for hitting the send button on the repeater. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You can try again. You can recraft your request and try it again. But with a voice phishing, there's no do-over. You can't try again. You have to basically, you get one shot. And so you need a little bit more finesse. It's not really a brute force attack. And then, for a web app, if you get locked out and, you're participating in an assessment for a client, you can call them and have your account reset. But you don't get to do that with voice phishing. If you get caught, if word gets out in the company, then you're done. And then one of the most interesting things I found was with web app stuff, when I really torch a site and find a lot of vulnerabilities and high severity vulnerabilities, I feel real, I'm proud of that. There's a lot of pride in that. With phishing, sometimes I feel guilt. I've never felt guilty about a web app assessment, but I've often felt guilty with voice phishing attacks. And it's usually when the person's nice, they're real sweet. I feel horrible that I tricked them. But, that's the purpose of us doing the assessment, just to try to help them out. But I still feel I feel guilty about it sometimes. And, web app is a science, and voice phishing is more art. And, it's technical versus non-technical. And with web app stuff, basically everything's kind of, you get a 200 or 400 or whatever, the web, it's pretty much black or white, cut and dried. And with phishing, there's more nuance with everything. And then, with web app stuff, I think it's more expected. You kind of know what's going to happen. But with phishing, you never really know. As soon as they answer the phone, there's really no way of knowing what's going to happen next. And that's kind of what makes it exciting to me. We want to talk to the client when we're having our client call, just to kind of define what the scope are, the rules, and what they want to, what they consider a successful attack. So, for example, how many targets are they going to give you to call? And how many of those targets do you need to actually call? So they may give you some extras if they give you, say, 50, but you only have to call 25, or it's nice to have a few extras. And how many calls do you need to make to each target? Do you have to, make several calls or one call, or, what do they consider enough to call each target? And then is post X in scope? Is, once you find credentials, are you allowed to use them as a part of the rest of the assessment that you're doing? And then what is allowed? Can you call their help desk during your OSINT? So you want to perhaps find the name of a help desk employee. And so you would call the help desk maybe, and somebody answers, and then you hear their name, and then you would use that and try to do some research on the person so that you can create an identity for yourself and impersonate them. And are you allowed to impersonate one of their employees? And can you call from the internal help desk number, or do you have to use an external number? So those are the kind of things you want to define with your client before you begin the assessment. And then also, what do they consider success? Is it credentials only, or anything, other proprietary information about the company, the software they're using, or client information, software releases, anything like that? Just kind of define what they consider success, because that's what what you're going to be trying to obtain during your assessment. So, a username enumeration with web apps, we always know what that is. We want to find a username. And, I love this example here from Burp. This, the website, it basically displayed the same thing, but the response gave me a true or false, whether or not it was a valid username or not. And I just thought that was great. But then with phishing, you want to do enumeration and maybe look for a help desk person. And so, for example, in this, I used LinkedIn, and I was able to find a help desk individual at their company, and I got his first and last name, and a lot of information about him, so that I could represent myself as that person on the calls. And here's some notes on how you want to be somebody, right, for when you're impersonating them. It's really all in the details. And so with OSINT, you can use LinkedIn, and you want to make sure that you aren't you during your search. If you're working for a security company and they start to wonder why a security company is checking out their profile, so you can create a different LinkedIn profile so that you're not actually yourself when you're searching for them, one of the things that's really helpful is to be a technical recruiter, because those people look at everybody and there's really not a whole lot of question about that happening. And you can use Google operators, such as is in this example, I'm giving the site linkedin.com, and then put in the company name. And that kind of gives you some information without going directly to LinkedIn. And then also, just make sure, again, what's allowed and in scope. And you want to check the statement of work and ask on the kickoff call to say, what am I allowed to do as far as OSINT? And another thing you want to kind of think about is when you're introducing yourself as that help desk person, do you say your first name only? Do you say both first name and last name? And for me, it kind of depends. So for a small company, I think it's reasonable to just give your first name. That sounds a little bit more authentic. If there's only 3 people that work on help desk, saying their first name only. So in this case, I was using Nicholas, and I decided I would use the name Nick. A small company, so just saying, hey, this is Nick, sound more reasonable than saying the full first and last name, which is a little bit more informal and friendly. But with a big company, you probably want to say the full name because there's so many people, and just saying Nick wouldn't be sufficient. And do you want to say the company name? Again, I think it depends on the size of the company. And, do you want to say help desk, support, IT, like, hey, this is Nick from help desk. And the best way to find out is to call the help desk. If you're allowed to call the help desk, see how they say it. How do they answer the phone? And you might just kind of want to imitate that. So again, it just depends on the company and the size of it. And I think just the bigger the company, the more people they have in support, maybe they're going to be a little bit more formal with their introduction. But just kind of check out the company culture and where they're located, and get a feel for how you want to best represent yourself as that help desk person when you're calling them. I think more common names are better. And the reason is, if you say, hey, this is Nick, and I say, this isn't Nick, say, yeah, actually there's 2 of us, right? There could be 2 Nicks. That's reasonable and believable. If the name is Octavius, most likely there's not 2 Octaviuses that work at the company, right? So in that example, if you can find a more common name, that way, if they recognize that you're not actually that person, it's believable that could just have the same name. You want to make sure the person still works there. That's just, hey, this is Nick. I thought you left 3 years ago. Like, that's, again, not really the best thing. And then, so again, pick the best identity for you. So you want to try to find something that matches your demographic. And, so for me, I'm going to try to pick somebody that matches my demographic, which is, mid-30s, like 35-year-old, right? This obviously is a person that's perfect for my age. Anyway, we're talking about lying here. So anyway, you want to pick the person that really best matches your demographic. It's just easier to be that person when you're pretending to call and be that person. So let's go here and talk about our web portal that we're going to create for them. So first of all, you want to try to have the subdomain with their company name. So in this example, I'm going to say Optive. We're going to have them go to this site and log in, and then they're going to be giving us their credentials without them knowing that they're giving us their credentials, right? So having their company name in the very beginning of it makes it much more believable. You say, hey, this is, you want to go to https://optive.examplesupport.com, and just having their company name right at the very beginning in that subdomain field makes it sound much more believable. The next part is the domain. And I think you want to try to keep it simple, because first of all, you're going to have to give them this domain over the phone. So the easier it is to give them, the better. So first of all, a simple domain name. And then also, depending on your pretext, you want to try to match what the pretext is. So, if it's a help desk call and you're calling to give them a software update. So, IT support, so Optive.IT support, or cloud support, or enterprise computing, or something that just sounds like it's reasonable. So you want to go to our website, optive.cloudsupporting.com or something, and anything that sounds reasonable. And the tough part is trying to get a good domain name. And sometimes you just have to try to hunt for them. And if you can find one that sounds like a great name, you should buy it. They're relatively inexpensive. It's just sometimes they're hard to find. they're not available. And then the last part is your top level domain. So the top level domain, you want to try to, ideally, you want to match whatever they are. So if they're a .com, you want yours to also be a .com. And it's just a little bit easier that way because you don't have to support, like explain .net. Oh, well, .net is our support site. You don't want to have to try to explain things. The less explaining you have to do, the better. So this is just a real simple example of how you're going to try to capture a domain name that you can use for your fake web portal. So in this example, optiv.examplesupport.com, and something that matches the pretext, has their name at the very beginning of this, their company name at the very beginning, and then the TLD that matches their company TLD. And these are just suggestions. There's no real rules on anything like this. It's just what I think is best and most helpful. So here's some portal examples and from some assessments that I've done. And so these are all redacted and everything, but here, this one shows you just a field for username and password, and it had their company name and logo and all their company information on it. It looked really nice. So they go to that site with the fake website that we give them and log in, and we've got their credentials. So this is just one example. This one worked pretty well. And then here's another one. Again, I had to redact a lot of it. There's really not much of it left, but this one's really good. I like how the user showed the username example, and the password just had those fields kind of with the grayed out values, just to kind of show them what to put in there. Because sometimes they're going to say, use my username, my email address, or, you just, you don't have to do the less explaining you have to do on the phone, the better. So those are just just a couple examples of some fake web portals that I've used in the past. Okay, and let's talk about our targets now. So in this example, we have a list of targets that the client gave us. And so to start with, I had like 16 names or something like that, right? And I looked at them, and I looked at their title and their phone numbers, and I'm going to make some notes on the call. But the very next thing I did when I saw this was kind of highlight a few people. And there's some people that maybe I was a little bit more nervous about. Like, so for example, an IT guy. So here, Kevin, the IT operations technician, I'm most likely calling, if I'm calling and pretending to be from the help desk and telling them that I need them to go to the login to this fake web portal to get a software patch, most likely the IT guy is not going to fall for that, right? So what I'm going to do in this is I'm going to move these guys to the bottom. So I'm going to call them in order of maybe easiest to more difficult. And that way it's just a little bit less likely. So if I get burnt at the very end, that's fine. I've already got, a bunch of people that I've done before I get burnt. So I'm just kind of put the more risky targets at the bottom of my list and do them last. And because again, like if somebody from IT gets a call like that, most likely they're going to send out an email to the entire company and let them know that there's a voice phishing scam going on, and don't give out or don't do any, don't log into any sites, and they're kind of going to warn them. So those definitely want to save those guys for last. And another key important thing is you don't ever want to have your identity, the person that you're spoofing as one of your targets, right? So if I'm calling Kevin, IT operations technician, and I'm pretending to be Kevin, an IT operations technician, most likely it may work for everybody else, but it's certainly not going to work for Kevin. So you just want to have a different identity. Just don't call the person as the person, because most likely they're not going to fall for that. Okay, so let's ask yourself, when you make this phone call, what is your goal for this call? And so I know a lot of people would think, well, my goal is to get them to log into the fake website, and so I can capture their credentials. They're going to log in and get their credentials. But for me, I don't think of it that way, because I'm not a good enough actor to kind of have that in my mind and actually make the phone call. So I started off way back doing help desk. So I know how help desk calls go, and I've had a lot of help desk calls in my career. And so to me, my goal is to get them a software patch. So plain and simple, in my mind, the website is legit. The software patch is legit. I care about them. They're one of my users at my company. I want them to get upgraded or patched or get whatever the update is that I'm telling them about. So in my mind, I'm totally 100% doing this call for the purpose of getting them a software patch. And that's how I pursue it. And everybody has their own way of doing it. And that's just the way I do it. I just, I'll be interested to hear if you guys have a different thought on that, but we'll get to that in the Q&A section. But again, I just, this is the way I do it. I like to just totally present myself as being that person. And as George Costanza once said, if you don't believe it's a lie, it's not really a lie. So in my mind, I just try to make the call as authentic and real, 100% that I'm just trying to get them. My goal is to get them a software patch, and that's it. And that's how I go after it. So let's kind of look at some of the things that we want to have with logging. Like, so obviously with web app, we're logging all our requests and responses, but with phishing, we want to log these for the client to give them at the end of the assessment. So just kind of, their name, the title of the person, the phone number, and then all your spoof information, your spoof number, name, date and time of call, and the call notes. One of the most important things is to enter these as you're going, because if you don't enter that information right after you made the call, you'll certainly forget. You can't enter them all at the end of the day. So just do them as you're moving along. It's much more helpful than trying to remember them and do them all after the fact. And then I have one here that is kind of singled out. Let's take a look at this. So on this call, Jennifer, I called her, and the very first call, it went to voicemail. So I had this note here. She goes by Jen, call rang 4 times and went to voicemail. Optive did not leave a message. So why would I have that note in there? And the reason is, so first of all, she goes by Jen. So when she answers the phone, I'm not going to say Jennifer. So I made this note to myself as a reminder. So the next time I call her, when she answers, hey, Jen, this is Nick from Help Desk. And she sounds a little bit more like I know her, because I know she goes by Jen. Again, so these little notes like this, it's all in the details, right? So, and then also say here, the call rang 4 times. And that helped me just to know if after the phone gets answered after 2, I know it's most likely not voicemail. It's going to be an answer. So those are the kind of things I like to just put little details like that in, and it helps me. And if there's too much detail, it doesn't really hurt to have that. But those are the type of things I want to log in for my logging. So let's talk about scripts here. With web app, we have all kinds of scripts. Everybody got a favorite script they use. And with phishing, I don't really use a script. So here's kind of an example of a sample script. Hi, Brittany, it's Nick from Help Desk. Hope you're doing well. Sorry to bother you. We're trying to push out an update over the weekend. And so just a little bit of informational background, and wonder if we get updated real quick. It should only take a minute. And, just things like how you're going to make what you're going to kind of say at the beginning of the call. And so this is when I say things we only kind of use. And the reason I say that is I actually don't use a script at all. Okay. So first of all, do you need to work from a script? I think it depends on what you think is helpful and how you work best. So that's just something that you want to decide for yourself. I don't use a script because you don't know what they're going to say, right? You can have maybe your first sentence, but then after that, depending on how they answer, I think it just sounds much more authentic to just make that phone call as a legit help desk call and not have anything that don't actually have a script that you're reading from. And here's what I have in front of me. And this is very important for me. So I want to have my name, because your name without any hesitation. Like somebody says, hey, I'm sorry, who'd you say this was? Yeah, you have to think about, oh, it's Nick. No, your name instantly. So I have that, I have in front of me on my screen, I have very bold, big words, right? I have my name and the name of the company. Particularly if you're doing several, close back to back, or even doing 2 at a time, which I've had to do. it's very difficult. Just make sure that you have the right company name. If you say the wrong company name, you're pretty much cooked. And if you say the wrong name, you introduce yourself as one name, and then you say a different name the second time. So I like to have my name and the name of the company right on my screen. I like to have the name of the person. I mean, that's not absolutely necessary. If you call them by the wrong name, that's easy to explain away. But it just sounds a little bit more professional that you call them by the right name. So I want to have, for each call, have that person's name. And then I want to have the URL. And I want to have it written out. And also, I like to use the NATO alphabet for a lot of things. Like, if you start rattling off, Hotel, Echo, Libra, Delta, Echo, like you throw out a bunch of the NATO alphabet letters. And so you say the URL and then you spit it out real quickly using the NATO alphabet. It sounds just so authentic and believable, like you've done it 100 times and they may not hear. So the first time they're just trying to type it out, and then also they're busy typing out that URL. Their mind is not really kind of thinking about, hey, is this really the person? Because their mind's so busy, trying to get the URL from you. When we say it with that NATO alphabet, it really does sound legitimate. You want to have your help desk manager's name just in case they ask you. Just if you can find it, it's helpful. And before I was actually asked who's your manager's manager, and just kind of like a security check. So in order to validate me, because I gave the name, it was somebody that worked at the company, but in order to validate me, they asked me the manager's manager. So that's kind of like multi-factor authentication, right? So I laughed at them. I said, I don't know my manager's manager. Are you kidding me? And because it was like a legit answer, I said, that's a reasonable answer rather than giving them the wrong name or saying, I don't know. So I said, I can find out and call you back, right? And then, obviously I did not call them back, but so those are the things maybe you can't always get, but it's helpful if you can find the help desk manager's name and also the manager's name, so that you can kind of have that as in case they ask. And then also just a little bit of information about the upgrade or the patch that we're supposedly doing. That can also be very helpful. And so that's kind of what I have on my script. I don't have any of the other stuff about what I'm going to say, just none of that. But again, just do what you think works best for you. So whatever you think is important for you to have on your script, then put that on your screen and have that. No real rules on it, just whatever you think works best for you. So here's some of the tools of the trade. So, with web app stuff, there's all kinds of different automated school tools, Acunetics, Web Inspect, Burp, NetSparker, Nmap, all kinds of things. Everybody has their favorites. And then, Burp is my favorite. But then with phishing, there's a few apps. Now there's a bunch of them, but I just listed the ones that I actually have used. So TraceBust was working great for me. Then it started becoming a little bit flaky. And with voice over IP, sometimes the problem is if you're dropping packets, the call gets dropped. It doesn't drop the whole call, but you'll have like big moments of silence, which kind of are awkward and hard to explain. So I started using SpoofCard, which is a little bit different. With SpoofCard, you make a phone call, and then from that number, it's using their voice over IP. So it's a little bit more stable for me. So those are the ones I've used. Currently, right now, SpoofCard's my favorite, and there's a ton of other ones. I did find it interesting that that their little icons are so similar. But anyway, if there are others that you like, please at the end of this in the Q&A, please share them in the chat. I'd love to hear about them. But anyway, those are the ones that I use the most. So we know that with websites, there's a lot of payloads that we're trying to kind of hide, and we have to do filter evasion, right? And we want to bypass and get our payload passed. And there's so many different ways that you can hide a cross-site scripting. Just fascinating to look at all the different ways of hiding payloads for web app assessments. The exciting thing about the voice phishing is that it's very much an art, not a science. And so there's ways that you can phrase things and ways that you can use sentences and words to kind of express your thought. So you can use this, as you know. So for example, I would say, you just need to go to our support site, which, as you know, is, and then I give them the support site. And so that phrase, as you know, and you don't overemphasize it. You don't say, go to our support site, which, as you know, is, so you make it just part of this, like, so free and easy. So you want to go to our support site, which, as you know, is optiv.itsupport.com. And then they hear that, as you know, and they say, well, I don't really know that, but I guess I should know that. Or you can say, as I'm sure you're aware, we're doing an update this week. I was like, well, I wasn't aware of that, but maybe I was supposed to be aware of that. And particularly if they are executive, like a higher level, like a VP or a director or executive director, and they're supposed to know everything, right? So you say, as I'm sure you're aware, we're doing a software update this week. Well, okay, I guess I don't really know that. And then also I like to use words like us, we, our. And so it's kind of like the idea that this is, our website, as you know, we are doing a company, not the company. You don't say the company, or, never refer to the website. It's just our website, us, we. So because you're part of the company, right? You want to present that you're part of that company. So try to focus on words that project that image that you actually work for the company. And sometimes you can use they. And then the reason I say sometimes they is that you can, in some instances, you can say, well, as you know, they're always doing these updates. And that kind of puts you maybe on a little bit of a lower level than maybe more on their level. Like, so it's kind of like the big top dog bosses, the guys up here in IT are the ones, always making us upgrade, and it kind of draws a little bit of commonality between you. As you know, they got us doing these updates. The boss man having me do these updates, things like that. And again, don't use the word the, as if you can avoid that. Just, again, it's us and we and our website, and it's not the website. Just try to represent yourself as working for the company. And then the spoken word is so much more powerful than written communication. And the interesting thing is that babies are able to hear long before they can see, right? Just after they're born, not even hearing is not the first thing they develop, but they definitely can hear before they're born, and even can hear after they're born. They can hear before they can see their mothers. And so, it makes sense that we're more auditory attuned, right, to something than just written word. And so let's take an example here. Let's look at this word what. Okay, so what is this word in this sentence, what? And so you might think you know what that means, but let's think about all the different, how that can be different based on how it's spoken versus how it's written. So it can be what, or what, or what. And so there's so many different ways, and you say the same word, but how you say it could be, okay, I don't know, I'm asking for information. I'm upset at this request. I am bothered by you. I don't believe you, or I'm surprised what you're telling me. I'm surprised. What? So there's so many different ways that just the same word, but how you say that. And that's what is so exciting about voice phishing, is we're crafting words. We're trying to convince them of something just with the spoken word. And that's what's so fun about it. When you start putting words together and coming up with ways of phrasing things, to me, that's what makes voice phishing so much fun. And, a lot of other things too, the cadence, how you're speaking, it could be, if it's very rapid or calm, or, how you're inflecting words, sense of urgency. Is this a very important software update? Or maybe if I'm more relaxed and calm, that projects the idea that, well, everybody else must have already had the update. I'm the only one, that doesn't have it, because he doesn't sound like he's really all that urgent. And so these are kind of things that you can just change a little bit about how you're speaking. And so those are the exciting things to me about voice phishing, is just how, you can say things. And one of the things I love is giving a few specifics. So for example, if you say, we're doing a software update and about half of our workstations have been updated so far. So compare that to saying something like, well, we're doing a software update this weekend, and as of 9:30 this morning, we've had 68% have done the upgrade, and not a single one of them has lost any work or had to reboot. So basically, 68%, right? That has to be real. Nobody could possibly be making up a number like 68%. So giving a few specifics like that, exact numbers, times, and percentages, and not, well, but don't say 50%, right? 54% just sounds so much more believable than 50%. So give a very specific number. Those are the type of things that are useful for me. And you want to build that trust, that relationship with the target. And so just kind of you're trying to help them, or whatever it takes to kind of develop that trust with them. And sometimes an insightful pause, so that if you're not quite sure what to say, you can kind of make it sound like you're kind of giving a little more thought, like well, the reason that we're doing this is because we have to do the back end update in 2 weeks. And there's a lot of compatibilities. So we're trying to go through, and you say things, give a little bit of a pause sometimes, makes it think like you're actually thinking, and not just giving a flippant answer, that you're an authority on it, and you have a lot of information. So again, just depending on how you want to develop that, and you develop your persona over time, and the more calls that you do, you become more and more refined in it. And the other thing I think is showing some restraint and just not overacting. People can pick up on that. So just show a little bit of restraint with your character. So just don't overdo it. The most important thing, and I should have had this on a slide all by itself because it's so important, confidence. If you actually call them with the thought that you're a help desk person, and you're doing a help desk upgrade for them, or a patch, and believe it 100%, you become much more believable. So confidence is by far the most important thing of any of these. So here's some common tactics that are used in social engineering. And I'll go through this list. I'll give some examples: reciprocity, scarcity, authority, consistency, liking, and consensus. So reciprocity, that's kind of an example of, if somebody's done something for you, you want to do something to help them, right? So, I've tried it. I called you earlier, but I got your voicemail. So I'm trying again. And so that's nice. He's calling me back. So I want to help him out now, right? So if you can develop any type of thing, like, I've called somebody at lunch one time, and they said, "Oh, I'm about to eat lunch. Can we do this after?" I said, yeah, I'll call you back. Or he said, "Can I call you back?" And I said, "Well, actually, if you call me back, you'll probably get voicemail, because we're doing this with all the upgrades with everybody today. So let me call you back, because chances are you'll just get voicemail if you call me back," which, was helpful, because obviously I'm calling from a spoofed number. So him calling me back wasn't going to do me any good. So anyway, so after I called him back, I said, "How much time should I give you for lunch?" And he said about an hour. So I called him about an hour and a half later, and he was very grateful of that. So we had a nice long chat after, and he was very thankful. And so reciprocity is very important. Scarcity is something that is used with a lot of phone scams. It doesn't really work in our scenario as much, but scarcity would be an example of where, this doesn't work. We say, like, this is a limited time offer. There's not many of these timeshares left. So that's obviously, we're not, say, well, there's not a whole lot of these software upgrades left, so you got to get it now while you can. So that obviously is not one we're going to use in our pretext. Authority is just meaning, that doesn't mean that you're their boss, but it means that you are an authority on the subject. You know what you're talking about. So again, so as of 9:30 this morning, we had 68% of our workstations were upgraded, and I haven't had a single report of anybody having a reboot. So it's really been working well. And so you sound like you know what you're talking about, you know everything about it, and that puts much more. They're much more likely to have trust in you if you present yourself in that way. Consistency is a great example of things like where people want things to remain kind of the same in terms of working, right? So an example of a way we could use this is that, well, we want to make sure we get this update, this software update done, because a lot of the software is not going to be compatible with our new backend that we're putting in a couple of weeks. So just to maintain the compatibility, we want to make sure that everybody gets patched first. And so they want to make sure they get patched, because otherwise, their stuff may not work in a few weeks, right? So that's an example of using consistency. Liking is simply, they like you, they trust you, they like you, they feel more comfortable working with you. So you want to be friendly and kind and nice, and let them like you. And then consensus, an example of that is where you'd say people want to be a part of a consensus. So if you're doing an update, you want to use a higher number of how many people, like the majority has done this upgrade, right? So consensus is that, hey, a lot of people have done this patch. I want to be like a lot of people. I don't want to be the only one without the patch, right? I want to be part of the consensus. So those are just not, now these don't apply to everybody and in every situation, but these are some examples of, these are this common tactics that are used in social engineering. All right, so here's a few more things. So evasive maneuvers when you're challenged. So an example of this is somebody said to me, "This is kind of suspicious. Why are you guys calling instead of emailing?" I said, "That's a great question. You know that 95% of ransomware and malware software is delivered via email. So what help desk is trying to do is get away from sending out links, because first of all, people are ignoring links. And second of all, that's, a lot of, malware is getting delivered that way. So we can't really say, hey, don't click on any links you get in email and then send out a link. It just doesn't make sense. So we really want to start getting away from sending out emails with updates and just doing it on the phone." And that was my answer. And it was, apparently it was believable, because she went to the site. But anyway, so you want to have those ahead of time though, right? You want to have your answers ready. Don't try to think of an answer after every second that you delay when you're asked a question, you start to lose a little bit of trust, right? And so if you wait too long, you're done. So you basically want to have your stuff ready for any type of thing like that. Okay, I like to be alone. And the reason I have this on here is because when somebody in my family is watching me do this, they know what I'm doing. They know the work that I'm doing, and they know it's for a good cause and it's to help companies become more secure. But if I say I'm, Nick from help desk, and they give me a look like, you're not like Nick from help desk, and as soon as I see that look, it just completely takes me out of my persona, right? So I just like to be alone. That's just my preference. I mean, it just really depends on what you like. Some people maybe want to be on a group chat, like a Zoom or Teams chat group call, and do it together. But I personally just like to be by myself, and that helps me get into the character a little bit better. But again, it's just whatever you think is helpful for you. Phishing and phishing are equal success. So in this, I'm talking about if you send an email and then call them, and so you have those together, those are I think it's a 3 times higher success rate. So if you can also, as part of your what is considered in scope on the assessment, if you can combine voice phishing with email phishing and put those together, you're going to have a much higher success. You say, hey, yeah, we sent out a link. We're trying to get that patch. And, it sounds much more believable. Time and day of call are also factors. So it's interesting to look at some of the higher success rates are in the middle of the week. So Monday's not a good day, because people are usually kind of catching up over the weekend and catching up with stuff that they have to get done. Monday's not a good day. And then also Friday's not a good day too, because most often on Friday, it's like, I don't want to worry about that now. So, so the more towards the middle of the week, and also after lunch is proven to be the most successful time for calls. So, you can't always do the calls at those times, but those are just in general, the more successful days and times are going to be after lunch and middle of the week. And then gender is a huge factor too. So as the person that's making doing the phishing, the security professional, females are much better at this than males. And it's kind of interesting to maybe think about why that could be the case. And there's a lot of psychology behind that. And I don't know all of that, but I'm kind of going to assume that a female target is going to be more trusting of a female caller, because they just maybe trust another woman more than a male. And then a male target is going to be more likely to fall victim to a female, because males may perhaps feel a little bit more invulnerable, like they're not going to fall for anything. So they maybe feel a little bit more bulletproof and they don't feel as risky talking to a woman as they would talking to a male. So the bottom line, though, is that females are much better at this sort of stuff than males. And what's interesting is there's not as many females that are doing this. It's really very, very much slated towards the males doing this sort of stuff. So there's a great opportunity for females that may want to begin pursuing this as a expanding their skill set and start to get to do this. I like the idea of giving them some options. And so the options, by that I mean, you can kind of give them, we can take care of this over the phone, or we'll have to call it, or we can create a help desk ticket for you. And maybe we could dial in and remotely connect to your machine after hours and apply the patch for you. And people are like, well, I don't want that, so you give them the two options. And then what you want to do is give them the option that you want them to take is the more desirable option for them. That's the one that they're most likely going to choose. So just give them a couple options. One's good and easy, and one's more of a pain, right? So we may have to, remotely connect your system after hours. The only problem is sometimes it causes reboots. And you're like, okay, you're going to dial in my machine remotely after hours, and my machine's going to reboot. I may lose work, or who knows, right? So that's not a good option for them. So yeah, I'll just do this over the phone right now. So if it comes up to giving them some options is useful, just make sure that the better option or the easier option for them is the one you want them to take. And not every call can be successful, but every call can be useful. So basically that just means, learn something from it. So if something didn't work, whatever, as long as you're able to learn and use that in your next call, then that's fine, because you learn something that's helpful for you. And then as you work down your target list, you can become more progressively aggressive. So, you want to take lower risk early on and then more risks later, because as you get later down the list, if you get burnt at that point, and the company becomes aware that there's a phishing attack, at least you already have been able to make a bunch of calls, maybe 20 calls before. So I like to become progressively more aggressive, and once I get moved down the list, then it doesn't matter as much if I'm caught at the end of the list as it would at the beginning of the list. So become more aggressive as you move down your list. And what is the most important thing? So for me, and I think for most people in this industry, the most important thing is to not get burnt. So you want to make sure that when you make the call, even if you don't get the credentials, you didn't do anything that makes them send out an email or call their help desk and let anybody know, hey, there's somebody impersonating you. Or just basically, so the most important thing is just don't get burnt and don't get caught. And I think that's, to me, is the most important thing. So I want to thank you for your time. And this is my email address, and I'm on Keybase. It's Eric DiPietro on Keybase, eric.dipietro@optiv.com. And we're going to have questions and answers after. And so I look forward to, seeing what you have for questions and answers from me. And here's some extra references that I've added in, some of the things I mentioned and discussed, if you want to take a look at any of those. And also, if you have any that you'd like to share, please feel free to share them in the chat. Anyway, thanks again for your time. I enjoyed our time together, and that's the end.